The scent of espresso and warm cornetti filled the small cafe where I'd been working for the past 3 months. My hands moved automatically, wiping down the marble counter that had seen better days, while my mind wandered to the stack of bills waiting in my tiny apartment. The morning rush had ended, leaving only the gentle hum of the espresso machine and the distant sound of traffic filtering through the open door. I was wiping the same spot for the 3rd time when I heard it, a small voice, tentative but determined, coming from somewhere near my hip. "Scusa, signorina." I looked down to find a pair of serious dark eyes staring up at me. The boy couldn't have been more than 6 years old, with black hair that fell across his forehead, and an expression far too solemn for someone so young. He wore expensive clothes, a navy blue sweater over a crisp white shirt, tiny dress shoes that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Everything about him screamed money and careful attention. Everything except the loneliness in those eyes. "Ciao, Piccolo," I said, crouching down to his level. My knees protested the movement after hours on my feet, but his face was worth the discomfort. "Are you lost? Where are your parents?" He shook his head, those dark eyes never leaving mine. "I'm not lost. I'm with my papa. He's outside on the phone. He's always on the phone." The last part came out with such resigned acceptance that my heart squeezed. "I see. And what's your name?" "Luca. Luca Maldivano." He said it with the careful pronunciation of a child who'd been taught to be proud of his name. "What's yours?" "Esmeralda. Esmeralda Ruiz." I offered him my hand formally, and he shook it with a gravity that made me want to smile and cry at the same time. "It's very nice to meet you, Luca Maldivano. You have a pretty name." He tilted his head, studying me with an intensity that was almost unnerving in someone so young. "Do you work here every day?" "Most days, yes. Why do you ask?" He looked over his shoulder toward the door, then back at me. When he spoke, his voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. "Because I think we'll be coming here a lot now. This is a good place." Before I could ask what made it good, a shadow fell across the doorway. I looked up and felt the air leave my lungs in a rush. The man standing in the entrance was tall, easily over 6 feet, with broad shoulders that filled the doorframe. His dark hair was swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble. All sharp angles and dangerous beauty. Strong jaw, straight nose, high cheekbones. But it was his eyes that held me frozen. Dark as espresso, intense and assessing, they swept over me with the kind of thorough examination that made my skin prickle with awareness. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than I made in 6 months. The kind of tailoring that came from Italian masters, not department stores. A platinum watch caught the light on his wrist. Everything about him radiated power, control, danger. "Luca." His voice was deep, carrying an edge of steel beneath the smooth Italian accent. "What did I tell you about wandering off?" "I didn't wander, Papa. I came inside to see the lady." Luca's hand found mine, his small fingers curling around my palm with surprising possessiveness. "Esmeralda? Isn't that a pretty name?" The man's eyes flickered to where our hands joined, and something dangerous flashed across his face before his expression smoothed into careful neutrality. He stepped fully into the cafe, and I became acutely aware of how small the space was, how his presence seemed to consume all the oxygen. "My apologies for my son's intrusion, signorina." He inclined his head slightly, a gesture that managed to be both polite and commanding. "Luca, release the lady's hand. We need to go." But Luca held on tighter. "Can't we stay, Papa? Just for a coffee?" "You said you wanted coffee." I watched the internal struggle play across the man's face. Annoyance at being manipulated by a 6-year-old, warring with what looked like reluctant affection. Finally he sighed, a sound of defeat that softened his features for just a moment. "One coffee." He looked at me directly for the first time since entering, and the force of that gaze made my breath catch. If the signorina doesn't mind. Of course not. I managed to find my voice, gently extracting my hand from Luca's grip to move behind the counter. What can I get for you, signor? Maldivano. Dante Maldivano. He moved to the counter with fluid grace, pulling out a chair for Luca before taking the seat beside him. Espresso, doppio, no sugar, and for the young gentleman? Luca's face lit up. Hot chocolate? With extra marshmallows? I looked to his father for confirmation. Dante nodded once, his expression unreadable. He's been well-behaved today. He's earned it. The simple statement, the quiet pride beneath the words, told me more about their relationship than any lengthy explanation could have. This was a man who noticed his son's behavior, who rewarded good choices, a father who paid attention. As I prepared their drinks, I was hyper-aware of their presence, of Luca's chatter, telling his father about something he'd seen on their walk, of Dante's low responses, his attention clearly divided between his son and the phone that kept buzzing in his pocket, of the way my hands trembled slightly as I topped the hot chocolate with marshmallows, more than Luca had asked for. When I brought their drinks to the table, Luca beamed up at me. Grazie, Esmeralda. Look, Papa. Extra marshmallows. So I see. Dante's gaze moved from the cup to me, and for just a moment, I saw something soften in those dark eyes. Grazie, signorina. How much do we owe you? I told him the price, and he pulled out a leather wallet thick with bills. He handed me far more than the drinks cost, waving away my attempt to make change. Keep it, for your kindness to my son. Signore, this is too much. I insist. His tone left no room for argument. Then, surprising me, he added, He doesn't warm to people easily. You must have made quite an impression. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed again. This time, he glanced at the screen and his expression hardened into something cold and distant. He answered in rapid Italian, his voice dropping into tones I couldn't quite hear, but that sent a chill down my spine. Business. The kind of business that made men speak in codes and look over their shoulders. Luca sipped his hot chocolate, seemingly unbothered by his father's transformation. He was used to this, I realized. Used to the phone calls, the sudden shifts in attention, the wall that came down between them whenever the outside world intruded. When Dante ended the call, he stood abruptly. Luca, finish your drink. We need to go. But Papa, now Figlio. The authority in his voice was absolute. Luca's shoulders slumped, but he obediently gulped down the rest of his hot chocolate, marshmallows and all. When he stood, he looked back at me with those two solemn eyes. Will you be here tomorrow, Esmeralda? I work most days, Piccolo. If you come by, I'll probably be here. He nodded, satisfied, then did something that surprised both me and his father. He darted around the counter and wrapped his arms around my waist in a quick, fierce hug. Grazie for the extra marshmallows, and for talking to me like I'm a person, not just a kid. The simple statement broke my heart a little. I hugged him back, my hand automatically smoothing down his dark hair. You're very welcome, Luca. Anytime. When he pulled away, I looked up to find Dante staring at us with an expression I couldn't quite read. Something between surprise and suspicion, and something else. Something almost like longing. Say goodbye, Luca. Arrivederci, Esmeralda. Luca waved enthusiastically as his father's hand settled on his shoulder, guiding him toward the door. At the threshold, Dante paused. He looked back at me, his dark eyes holding mine for a heartbeat too long. Buona giornata, Signorina Ruiz. Then they were gone, leaving only the lingering scent of expensive cologne and the generous tip on my counter. I should have known then that this wasn't a simple encounter. Should have recognized the way Luca had looked at me, with a child's uncanny ability to see what adults try to hide. Should have understood the warning in Dante's carefully controlled expression. But I was just a cafe worker from a working-class neighborhood, trying to make rent and survive another month in a city that chewed up and spat out people like me daily. What could a man like Dante Maldivano, with his expensive suits and dangerous eyes and lonely son, possibly want with someone like me? I would learn soon enough. Because Luca kept his word. They came back the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. Each visit followed the same pattern. Luca would rush in first, his face lighting up when he saw me. Dante would follow, phone always in hand, expression always controlled. They would order espresso doppio for him, hot chocolate with extra marshmallows for Luca. They would sit. Luca would chatter. Dante would listen with half his attention while fielding calls. And each day, I found myself watching them a little more closely. Noticing the way Dante's hand would automatically reach out to steady Luca when he bounced too enthusiastically in his chair. The way his expression would soften, almost imperceptibly, when his son laughed. The way he cut Luca's cornetto into perfect bite-sized pieces without being asked, because he knew his son preferred it that way. Small gestures of care from a man who otherwise seemed made of ice and control. I noticed other things too. The way Dante's jaw would tighten when certain names came up on his phone. The shadow that would cross his face when Luca asked innocent questions about his mother. The careful distance he maintained from everyone in the cafe, including me, as though proximity itself was dangerous. This was a man with walls so high, even he couldn't see over them. 3 weeks after that first meeting, Dante Maldivano changed the rules. I was closing up the cafe, wiping down tables in the golden light of late afternoon, when the door chimed. I looked up expecting a last-minute customer, and found Dante standing in the entrance. Alone. No Luca bouncing beside him. No phone pressed to his ear. Just Dante, in another impeccable suit, this one navy blue, watching me with those intense dark eyes. "We're actually closed, Signor Maldivano," I said, my pulse inexplicably quickening. "But I can make you a quick espresso if you'd like. That's not why I'm here." He stepped inside, and suddenly the cafe felt smaller, more intimate. The fading sunlight caught the sharp planes of his face, turned his eyes almost black. "I came to speak with you, about my son." My stomach tightened with concern. Is Luca all right? Did something happen? He's fine, physically. Dante moved closer, each step deliberate and measured. But he's become attached to you. Asks about you constantly. Insists we come here every day, even when it's inconvenient. He drew a picture of you at school yesterday. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his jacket pocket and held it out. I took it with trembling fingers, unfolding it to reveal a child's drawing. Me, behind the counter, with an oversized smile and wild dark curls. Luca had labeled it in careful letters. "Esmeralda, my friend." "It's sweet," I said softly, tracing the crayon lines with my fingertip. "He's a wonderful artist. He's becoming dependent on you." Dante's voice had gone cold, distant. "And that's dangerous." I looked up sharply. "Dangerous? He's 6 years old and lonely. All he wants is a mother." The word came out harsh, bitter. "He wants what he can't have, what I can't give him, and you're making it worse by encouraging him." Anger flared hot in my chest. I set down the cloth I'd been holding and crossed my arms, meeting his gaze without flinching. I'm not encouraging anything except basic human kindness, something it seems like he doesn't get enough of. Dante's eyes flashed dangerously. "You know nothing about how I raise my son. I know he lights up when someone pays attention to him. I know he's starved for affection and connection. I know he's desperate for normalcy in a life that clearly isn't normal." I took a step forward, suddenly not caring that this man could probably ruin me with a single phone call. "What happened to his mother, Signor Maldivano?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Dante's expression went from cold to glacial, his body going rigid with barely controlled fury. "That," he said, his voice deadly quiet, "is none of your concern. It becomes my concern when her son hugs me like I'm a lifeline, when he asks me questions about families and happiness that I don't know how to answer, when he looks at his father with eyes that are too old and too sad for a child. Basta. Enough." The single word cracked like a whip. "You're a cafe worker he's met a handful of times. You're not his family. You're not his friend. You're nothing to him. Or to me." The words should have hurt. They were meant to hurt. I could tell by the precision with which he delivered them. But I saw something else beneath his anger. Fear. This powerful, dangerous man was afraid. "If that's true," I said quietly, "then why are you here? If I'm nothing, if Luca's attachment means nothing, why bother warning me off?" His jaw clenched so hard I could see the muscle jumping. For a long moment, we stood there in the empty cafe, locked in a silent battle of wills. The air between us felt charged, electric, thick with unspoken tensions. Finally, Dante reached into his jacket again and pulled out a business card. He set it on the counter between us with deliberate care. "If you truly care about Luca's well-being," he said, his voice still tightly controlled, "you'll make yourself less available. Work different shifts. Be busy when we come in. Let him forget about you before he gets hurt." "And if I don't?" Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. "Then I'll make sure you do. I protect my son from threats, Signorina Ruiz. All threats." He turned and walked toward the door, his footsteps echoing in the quiet space. But at the threshold, he paused without turning back. "For what it's worth," he said, his voice softer now, almost regretful. "He talks about you the way he used to talk about her, before she left, before she broke his heart and taught him that people leave." He glanced back over his shoulder, and the pain in his eyes took my breath away. "I won't let him go through that again. Not even for someone who makes him smile the way you do." Then he was gone, leaving me standing in the empty cafe with a child's drawing clutched in one hand and a business card in the other. I looked down at the card. Simple, elegant, expensive paper. Just a name and a phone number. Dante Maldivano. No business title, no company name, just his name, like that was enough. Like everyone should already know who he was and what he did. I should have taken his warning. Should have requested different shifts. Made myself scarce. Protected my own heart from the inevitable pain of losing Luca's bright presence in my days. But that night, lying in my tiny apartment with bills spread across the second-hand coffee table, I couldn't stop thinking about a little boy with dark eyes too old for his age. A boy who'd been abandoned by his mother and now lived behind walls built by a father too damaged to let anyone close. I couldn't do it. Couldn't turn my back on that child. Consequences be damned. The next day, when Luca burst through the cafe door with his usual enthusiasm, I was ready with hot chocolate and extra marshmallows. And when Dante followed, his expression carefully neutral, I met his gaze with steady defiance. He saw the challenge in my eyes, recognized it. And something shifted in his expression, something between resignation and reluctant respect. The game was on. Over the following weeks, Dante tried everything to discourage Luca's attachment. He would sit at the table farthest from the counter, forcing Luca to stay beside him rather than hovering near me. He would time their visits for the cafe's busiest hours, when I barely had time to exchange more than a few words. He would bring work, spreading papers across the table and demanding Luca stay quiet while he conducted business. But Luca was determined. He would wait patiently for lulls in the crowd, then seize his chance to come talk to me. He brought me drawings to hang behind the counter. He told me stories about school, about the turtle he'd named Leonardo, about the books he was reading. And slowly, despite his father's best efforts, he wove himself into the fabric of my days. Dante watched it happen with growing frustration. I could see it in the tension of his shoulders, the tightness around his eyes. But he never explicitly forbade Luca from talking to me. Never created a scene or issued ultimatums. Because despite everything, Dante Maldivano loved his son. And his son was happier than he'd been in months. It was a Thursday afternoon, unusually quiet, when everything shifted again. Luca had finished his hot chocolate and was showing me a new drawing when Dante's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, and his entire demeanor changed. The call he'd been waiting for, clearly. He stood abruptly. "Luca, stay here. Don't move. I'll be right outside." Then he was gone, pacing on the sidewalk outside the cafe, his voice too low for me to hear but his body language speaking volumes. Tension, anger, controlled violence barely leashed. Luca watched his father through the window, his small face troubled. "He's been worried lately," he said quietly, almost to himself. "More than usual. I heard Nono on the phone last week. Something about threats and territories and keeping me safe." My blood ran cold. "Luca." "It's okay," he interrupted, looking up at me with those two knowing eyes. "I know what Papa does, what our family does. I'm not stupid. You're 6 years old. Almost 7. He said it with such seriousness that I had to fight back a sad smile. "And I've always known. Papa tries to protect me from it, but I hear things, see things." He reached out and touched my hand where it rested on the counter. "That's why I like coming here. It's normal here. You're normal. You don't look at me and see danger or legacy or any of that. You just see me." The simplicity of it, the heartbreaking wisdom, made my throat tight. "I do see you, Piccolo, and what I see is a brave, smart, kind boy who deserves to be just a kid sometimes. I wish..." He started, then stopped, biting his lip. "What do you wish?" He looked out at his father, still pacing, still gesturing sharply with his free hand, then back at me. "I wish you could be part of our family. Papa needs someone too. He just doesn't know it." Before I could respond, Dante ended his call and strode back into the cafe. His expression was dark, troubled, and when his eyes found mine, I saw something that made my breath catch. Calculation, decision. The look of a man who'd just made a choice he couldn't take back. "Luca, get your things. We need to go. Now." There was something in his voice that made Luca scramble to obey without his usual protests. He grabbed his backpack, gave me a quick wave, and headed for the door. But Dante didn't follow immediately. He moved to the counter, close enough that I could smell his cologne, expensive and woodsy. Close enough to see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. "We need to talk," he said quietly. "Properly. Not here. Not with interruptions." He pulled out another business card, this one with an address handwritten on the back. "Come to this address tomorrow night, 8 p.m. We're going to reach an understanding. You and I." "And if I don't come?" His smile was cold, dangerous, and somehow sad all at once. "You'll come, because despite my warnings, despite every rational reason to stay away, you care about my son, and you want to know what happens next." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "Just like I want to know why you won't run, when everyone else does." Then he was gone, following Luca out into the fading afternoon light, leaving me with an address, a racing heart, and the certainty that tomorrow night would change everything. The address led me to a neighborhood I'd only ever driven through, never stopped in. Old money, the kind that didn't need to prove anything. Tree-lined streets, iron gates, houses that had stood for generations, accumulating history and secrets in equal measure. The Maldivano estate sat behind high walls topped with security cameras that tracked my approach. When I pressed the buzzer at the gate, a voice answered immediately, as though they'd been waiting. "Nome?" "Esmeralda Ruiz, Signor Maldivano is expecting me." The gate swung open silently, revealing a long driveway lined with perfectly manicured hedges. At the end stood a villa that took my breath away. 3 stories of honey-colored stone and arched windows, with ivy climbing the walls and lights glowing warmly from within. This wasn't just wealth. This was legacy, history, power that had accumulated over generations. I almost turned around, almost ran back through those gates and never looked back. But I thought of Luca, of his 2 solemn eyes and bright smile, and forced my feet to keep moving. The front door opened before I could knock. An older man stood there, distinguished in a formal suit, with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes that reminded me achingly of Luca. Signorina Ruiz, benvenuta. I'm Marco Maldivano, Dante's father. Please, come in. Dante's father. The matchmaking nonno Luca had mentioned in passing. I'd expected someone stern, intimidating. Not this warm welcome and gentle smile. Thank you for having me, Signor Maldivano. Per favore, call me Marco. Anyone who makes my grandson smile the way you do has earned the right. He ushered me inside, through a marble foyer with a sweeping staircase. Dante is in his study, but first come. Luca has been waiting for you. Luca's still awake? It's past his bedtime, surely. Marco's smile turned conspiratorial. He may have convinced his father that homework required staying up late tonight, and his father may have allowed it, knowing full well there's no homework on Fridays. He led me down a hallway lined with family photographs. They've both been anticipating your arrival, though only one of them will admit it. We reached a set of double doors, and Marco pushed them open to reveal a cozy library. Shelves of books lined every wall, broken only by a fireplace where flames danced cheerfully. And in the center of it all, on a plush rug, sat Luca surrounded by toy cars and building blocks. He looked up when we entered, and his face transformed. Esmeralda, you came. I told Papa you would, but he said maybe you'd be too scared of our big house. He scrambled to his feet and ran over, grabbing my hand. Come see what I'm building. It's a city, with a cafe right in the middle. That's yours, see? He dragged me to his creation, chattering excitedly about each building, each tiny detail he'd included. I knelt beside him on the rug, genuinely impressed by the complexity of his design. This is amazing, Luca. You have such imagination. Papa says I get it from Nonno. He used to build things too before. He trailed off, glancing at his grandfather. Before I got old and lazy, Marco finished with a wink. Now I just watch my brilliant grandson create masterpieces. He checked his watch with theatrical obviousness. Ah, I just remembered. I have an important phone call to make. Esmeralda, would you mind staying with Luca for a few minutes? I'd hate to leave him alone. I opened my mouth to say of course, and caught the gleam in Marco's eye. This was intentional, calculated. He was giving Luca time with me while keeping Dante waiting. Of course, Signor. Marco, take your time. After he left, Luca and I played with his city. He told me stories about the tiny people who lived there, about their daily lives and dramas. Normal things, sweet things, the kind of imagination games any child might play. Except this wasn't any child. This was the heir to something I was only beginning to understand. Esmeralda? Luca's voice went quiet, serious. Do you think Papa will ever be happy again? The question caught me off guard. What makes you think he's not happy, Piccolo? He smiles sometimes, but it never reaches his eyes, you know? Not like when he looks at me. Or when. He hesitated. Never mind. Or when what? Luca bit his lip, then decided to be brave. When he thinks I'm not watching, and he looks at you, at the cafe, his eyes go all soft for just a second, before he remembers to be hard again. My heart stuttered. Luca, I don't think... I know what I see. I'm good at watching people. It's how I stay safe. Such a heartbreaking statement from someone so young. And I see how he looks at you, like maybe you could make the sad go away. Before I could respond, a voice cut through the warm library air like a blade. Luca, it's past your bedtime. I looked up to find Dante standing in the doorway, his expression carefully neutral. But his eyes, those dark eyes, burned with something I couldn't quite identify, as they moved from his son to me, kneeling beside each other on the floor. But Papa, Esmeralda just got here. Bed, now. You can see her tomorrow. Tomorrow. The single word hung in the air, a promise and a threat. I was being given permission to return, even as I was being reminded who held all the power here. Luca, recognizing the tone that meant no arguments, sighed dramatically. He hugged me quickly, fiercely, whispering, "Thank you for coming," against my shoulder. Then he was gone, trudging toward the door where his father waited. At the threshold, Dante's hand settled on his son's shoulder with automatic tenderness. Buonanotte, figlio. Sweet dreams. Night, Papa. Don't mess this up, okay? Then he was gone before Dante could respond, leaving us alone in the firelit library. Dante closed the door with a soft click. The sound felt final, like sealing us in together. He crossed to the leather sofa near the fireplace and sat, gesturing for me to take the chair opposite. "Wine?" he offered, his voice carefully polite. "No, thank you. I'd prefer to keep my head clear." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Smart. You should always keep your wits about you when dealing with men like me." "Men like you?" I challenged, sitting in the indicated chair but keeping my spine straight, my guard up. "What kind of man is that, Signor Maldivano?" "Dante," he corrected. "If you're going to be part of Luca's life, we should at least use first names." He poured himself 2 fingers of amber liquid from a crystal decanter. "And to answer your question, dangerous men. Men who've built empires in shadows. Men who do what's necessary to protect what's theirs." "Is that what I am now? Yours to protect?" "That's what we're here to determine." He took a sip of his drink, his eyes never leaving mine. "My son has decided you're important. That makes you my concern." "Your concern or your problem?" "Both." He set down his glass with deliberate care. "Esmeralda, let me be direct. I don't do this. I don't bring strangers into our lives. I don't allow attachments that could be exploited. After Luca's mother." He stopped, his jaw tightening. I swore I'd never put him through that again. Through what? Her leaving? Through loving someone who would abandon him. The pain in his voice was raw, real. Luca was 2 when she left. One day she was there, the next she was gone. No explanation, no goodbye. Just a note saying she couldn't do this anymore. Couldn't handle the life, the restrictions, the danger. She left her baby? Horror filled my voice. She left us both. And in doing so, taught Luca his first hard lesson. That love is conditional. That people leave when things get difficult. Dante's eyes met mine, and I saw years of anger and betrayal in carefully controlled pain. I will not allow him to learn that lesson again. "So what are you proposing? That I disappear? That I break his heart to protect it from maybe being broken later?" "No." The simple word surprised me. "As I said, Luca has decided you're important. And when my son makes a decision, he's remarkably stubborn. Like his father." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "So, instead, I'm proposing an arrangement." My stomach tightened with apprehension. "What kind of arrangement?" "You spend time with Luca. Regular, structured time. You become a stable presence in his life. someone he can count on. And in return, I ensure your needs are met. I don't need your money, Dante. Everyone needs money, Esmeralda. Don't be naive. His voice wasn't cruel, just matter of fact. I've had you investigated. I know about the bills, the second job, the apartment with the leaking ceiling that your landlord refuses to fix, the mother in the nursing home whose care is draining your savings. I jerked to my feet, fury burning through shock. You had no right. I had every right. He stood as well, and suddenly the space between us felt charged, dangerous. My son's safety is my priority. Anyone who enters his life gets vetted, thoroughly. But what I found wasn't a threat. I found a woman working herself to exhaustion to take care of her family. I found integrity, loyalty, strength. He moved closer, and I forced myself not to step back. You want to take care of Luca out of the goodness of your heart? Fine. I respect that. But let me take care of some of your burdens in return. Your mother's care, paid for. Your rent, covered. A small salary for the time you spend with Luca. You want to pay me to spend time with him? To what, be his nanny? No. Something flickered in his eyes. I want you to be his friend. To give him the normalcy I can't. To show him kindness and warmth and all the things that don't exist in my world. And what do you get out of this arrangement? The air between us seemed to thicken. Dante's gaze dropped to my lips for just a heartbeat before returning to my eyes. Peace of mind, knowing my son is happy, knowing someone I trust is watching over him when I can't. His voice lowered. And perhaps the pleasure of your company occasionally. Despite my better judgment, I find I don't entirely mind your presence. It wasn't a declaration. It was barely even a compliment. But the way he said it, the heat in his eyes, made it feel like so much more. This is insane, I breathed. You're asking me to essentially become part of your lives, part of your family, in exchange for money. I'm offering you a job, Luca's companion, his friend, his... He hesitated on the next word as though it cost him something. His family, if you'll accept it, but only if you mean it. Only if you're prepared to stay. Because if you agree to this and then leave, if you teach him that lesson again, there will be consequences. The threat was gentle but absolute. Consequences. I protect what's mine, Esmeralda, at any cost. If you hurt my son, you'll discover exactly what kind of man I am beneath the expensive suits and polite words. I should have been terrified, should have refused, walked out, never looked back. But I thought of Luca's bright smile and two old eyes, of the way he'd whispered, "Don't mess this up," to his father, of a little boy who just wanted to be loved without conditions. If I agree, I said slowly, I have conditions of my own. Surprise flickered across Dante's face. Which are? First, this isn't about money. Pay for my mother's care if you want. I won't refuse help that benefits her. But I won't take a salary for spending time with Luca. He's not a job. He's a child who needs kindness. And that's not something you can put a price on. Dante's expression shifted, something like respect entering his eyes. And second, you don't get to control how I interact with him. I'll keep him safe. I'll never intentionally hurt him. But I won't lie to him or treat him like he's fragile. He gets honesty from me, age-appropriate but real, and you don't get to dictate what that looks like. You want me to hand over control of my son's well-being to a woman I barely know? No, I corrected. I'm asking you to trust me the way Luca already does. To believe that I have his best interests at heart, to accept that maybe, just maybe, not everything needs to be controlled and calculated and managed. The silence stretched between us, taut with tension. Finally, Dante extended his hand. Deal. But know this, Esmeralda. I'm giving you something precious. something I've never given to anyone since his mother left. I'm giving you access to my son's heart. Don't make me regret it. I took his hand, felt the warmth and strength of his grip, saw the vulnerability he was trying so hard to hide beneath the commanding exterior. I won't, I promised. On my life, I won't. And standing there in that firelit library, with our hands joined and our futures suddenly intertwined, I felt the first stirrings of something dangerous. Something I absolutely could not afford to feel for this complicated, damaged, powerful man. But Dante Maldivano had already claimed more than he knew. He'd claimed my time, my care for his son, my promise of loyalty. I was only beginning to realize he might claim my heart too, whether either of us wanted it or not. 3 months into our arrangement, I'd become a fixture in the Maldivano household. I came 3 afternoons a week after Luca got out of school, spending hours helping with homework, playing elaborate imagination games, taking walks in the gardens. On weekends, I joined them for breakfast, usually arriving to find Marco already plotting some new way to throw Dante and me together. The old man was shameless. He'd forget to mention he couldn't make family dinners until I was already there. He'd suddenly remember urgent business, right when Dante, Luca, and I were settling in for movie night. He'd engineer situations that left Dante and me alone together, always with that knowing smile and strategic exits. Today was no exception. I'd arrived at 3 p.m. to find Marco waiting with a suspiciously bright smile. Ah, Esmeralda. Perfect timing. Dante is running late, a meeting went long, and I just got a call about an estate matter in Milan. I must leave immediately. But Luca is waiting for you in the garden. He's been planning some elaborate treasure hunt. You know how he gets. Marco was already grabbing his coat, moving toward the door with impressive speed for a man his age. Dante should be home by 5:30. You don't mind waiting? Before I could answer, he was gone, leaving me shaking my head at his obvious matchmaking. The man was determined. I'd give him that. I found Luca in the garden, exactly as Marco had said. He'd set up an elaborate course with clues hidden among the rose bushes and stone pathways. Esmeralda. Finally. Nonno said you'd help me test the treasure hunt before Papa gets home. It's for his birthday next week. Do you think he'll like it? He'll love it, Piccolo. Anything you make, he treasures. We spent the next hour following clues, Luca adjusting the difficulty as we went, wanting it to be challenging enough to impress his father, but not so hard it frustrated him. The care he put into every detail broke my heart a little. This last clue, he said seriously, leads to his office. I hid his present there. Come on, you have to see it. He dragged me inside, through hallways I'd walked dozens of times now, to the heavy wooden door of Dante's private office. A room I'd never been invited into. Luca, I don't think... It's okay. Papa won't mind. You're family now. He pushed open the door without hesitation. The office was exactly what I'd expected. Dark wood, leather furniture, shelves of books in Italian and English, a massive desk with neat stacks of papers, windows overlooking the grounds. Everything organized, controlled, revealing nothing personal, except for one wall. I stopped in the doorway, my breath catching. An entire wall was covered in photographs. Not the formal family portraits that lined the hallways, but candid moments. Luca, at every age, from tiny infant to the 6-year-old tugging me further into the room, and recently, new additions. Photos of Luca and me at the cafe, in the garden, reading together on the library sofa. Someone had been documenting our time together, preserving these moments. Papa takes them, Luca said, following my gaze. When he thinks we don't notice, he says. He says he never wants to forget what happiness looks like. The words hit me like a physical blow. I turned away from the photos before the emotion in my chest could overflow. Where's his present, Piccolo? Luca showed me the carefully wrapped box hidden in a desk drawer. He'd made a book, stapled construction paper filled with drawings of their family, Dante and Luca, Marco, the house, the garden, and in the later pages, me. Included in birthday celebrations, holidays, ordinary moments. "Do you think he'll understand?" Luca asked anxiously. "That you're part of our family now too?" I knelt beside him, taking his small hands in mine. "I think he'll treasure it, just like he treasures you." "But do you want to be part of our family?" His dark eyes, so like his father's, searched mine with uncomfortable perception. "Or are you just here because you're nice and Papa asked you?" "Oh, Luca." I pulled him into a hug, this bright, intuitive child who saw too much. "I'm here because being with you makes me happy. Because you're funny and smart and kind. Because I care about you very much." "And Papa?" The question was muffled against my shoulder. "Do you care about him too?" I froze. How to answer this? How to explain to a 6-year-old what I barely understood myself? That yes, somewhere in the past 3 months, Dante had stopped being just Luca's father and become someone I thought about too often. Someone whose rare smiles made my pulse quicken. Someone I found myself watching when he wasn't looking, cataloging the small gestures of affection he showed his son, the careful control that slipped only in private moments. "Your father is a good man," I said carefully. "A good father. I respect him very much." "But do you like him?" Luca pulled back, fixing me with that too knowing stare. "The way grown-ups like each other? Because I think he likes you. He's just scared." "Scared? Your father doesn't seem scared of anything. He's scared of people leaving, of being hurt again, of..." He hesitated. Then in a whisper, "Of being happy, and then losing it." The insight from this child shattered something in my chest. Before I could respond, we heard the front door open. Dante's voice calling out, "Luca, where are you?" "In here, Papa. We're testing my treasure hunt." Footsteps approached. Then Dante filled the doorway, still in his business suit, tie loosened, looking tired and impossibly handsome. His eyes found me first, kneeling on the floor of his office, and something flickered across his face before his expression smoothed. "Esmeralda, I didn't know you were still here." "Nono had to leave for Milan," Luca supplied cheerfully. "Emergency estate business, so Esmeralda is staying until you got home. We've been testing your birthday treasure hunt." Dante's gaze moved to his son, and that careful mask slipped into genuine warmth. "Have you now? And here I thought birthdays were supposed to be surprises. The treasure hunt is the surprise, not that there is one." Luca bounced on his toes. "Can Esmeralda stay for dinner? Per favore?" "She never stays for dinner anymore." Because I'd been deliberately keeping distance, I realized. Spending time with Luca but leaving before the family meals, before the intimate evening hours, protecting my own heart from wanting things I couldn't have. "If Esmeralda doesn't have other plans," Dante said, his eyes finding mine again, "she's always welcome at our table." The invitation felt weighted with more than politeness. Like a test, like an opportunity, like a risk. I should probably... "Please?" Luca grabbed my hand. "We're having carbonara. Chef Marco makes the best carbonara, and we can watch a movie after. It's Friday, so I get to stay up late." I looked at this child who'd woven himself so completely into my heart, then at his father, who watched us both with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Okay," I heard myself say. "Dinner sounds lovely." Luca cheered. Dante's eyes flickered with something that might have been satisfaction. And just like that, the careful boundaries I'd built began to crumble. Dinner was an education in family dynamics. Marco, who'd miraculously returned from his emergency, dominated conversation with stories from Dante's childhood. Stories clearly designed to humanize the intimidating man at the head of the table. "Did you know?" Marco said with twinkling eyes. That Dante used to climb onto the kitchen counter every morning to steal cookies before breakfast. His mother would find him there, still in pajamas with chocolate on his face, swearing he had no idea how it got there. Luca giggled. "Papa, you told me I couldn't have sweets before meals." "I was 6 and lacked impulse control," Dante said dryly. "You at least ask permission before raiding the cookie jar." "Sometimes," Luca muttered, earning laughs around the table. I watched Dante in this domestic setting, saw the way he softened around his son and father, the way his hand would automatically reach out to wipe sauce from Luca's chin, the way he listened to his son's rambling stories about school with genuine interest, asking questions that showed he remembered every detail of Luca's daily life. This was the man beneath the reputation. The father who made sure his son felt heard and valued. The son who clearly adored his own father despite their complicated family history. After dinner, as promised, we gathered in the media room for a movie. Luca chose an animated film I'd seen a dozen times, but I didn't mind. This wasn't about the movie. Luca positioned himself between me and Dante on the large sectional sofa, his small body a warm weight against my side. 10 minutes in, his head drooped onto my shoulder. 20 minutes, his breathing deepened. 30 minutes, he was completely asleep, his hand clutching my sleeve. "He does this," Dante said softly, his voice barely above a whisper so as not to wake his son. "Gets comfortable and passes out. Happens every movie night. Should we move him to bed?" "Let him sleep a bit longer. He's content." Dante's hand moved automatically to stroke his son's dark hair, a gesture so tender it made my throat tight. "Thank you. For today. For being here. I enjoy being here." "I know. That's what terrifies me." I looked across Luca's sleeping form to find Dante watching me with an intensity that stole my breath. In the dim light from the movie, his features were softer, more vulnerable. "Why does that terrify you?" I whispered. "Because Luca isn't the only one getting attached, and that was never part of the arrangement." The admission hung between us, heavy with implications. I should have let it lie, should have changed the subject or made a joke. Instead, I heard myself ask, "Would that be so terrible? If you got attached?" "Yes." The word was firm, but his eyes told a different story. "Because I don't know how to do this, Esmeralda. I don't know how to let someone in without waiting for them to leave. I don't know how to trust again. I don't know how to be anything except what I am. And what are you?" His smile was sad, self-deprecating. Damaged, dangerous. A father doing his best but constantly afraid it's not enough. A man who's built his life on control because chaos destroyed him once already. I wanted to reach across the sleeping child between us, to touch Dante's face, to tell him he was so much more than his past wounds. But I couldn't. Not with Luca there. Not when the moment felt too fragile, too precious to risk. "I don't think you're as damaged as you believe," I said instead. "I think you're careful. Protective. And those aren't bad things. They are when they prevent you from living. Then maybe it's time to try living again." His eyes searched mine in the flickering light from the screen. "Is that what you're doing here, Esmeralda? Teaching me to live?" "No, I'm just being myself. The rest is up to you." Something shifted in his expression. Decision, maybe. Or surrender. He stood carefully, lifting Luca into his arms with practiced ease. "Come with me," he said quietly. "Help me put him to bed. It usually takes 2 of us anyway." I followed him through the quiet house to Luca's room, a space I'd been in dozens of times, but that felt different in the evening darkness. Dante laid his son on the bed with infinite gentleness, and together we removed Luca's shoes, pulled the covers up, straightened the pillow under his dark head. It felt domestic, Intimate. Like something a real family would do. Luca stirred slightly, his eyes fluttering open just enough to register our presence. "Stay," he murmured, the word barely audible. "Both of you. Please." Dante looked at me, a question in his eyes. I nodded. We sat on opposite sides of Luca's bed, Dante in the small chair by the nightstand, me perched on the edge of the mattress. And there, in the soft glow of the nightlight, we watched him settle back into deep sleep, his small chest rising and falling with peaceful breaths. "He asked me earlier," I whispered, barely audible, "if I wanted to be part of your family. Not just his friend, but truly part of it. What did you say?" "That being here makes me happy." I looked across the bed at Dante. Was I wrong to let him hope for that? I don't know. His honesty was brutal and beautiful. 3 months ago, I would have said yes. That hope leads to disappointment, and I won't put him through that again. He paused, his hand moving to rest on Luca's small shoulder. But now I'm starting to think maybe hope is worth the risk, if the alternative is this half-life we've been living. "Dante, don't." He held up a hand. "Don't say anything yet. Don't make promises or declarations. Just stay. Tonight, tomorrow, next week. Just keep staying, and we'll figure out the rest as we go." It wasn't a declaration of love or a commitment to forever, but from this damaged, careful man, it was everything. "Okay," I breathed. "I'll stay." And there, in the peaceful darkness of a child's room, with Luca sleeping between us like a bridge connecting two wounded hearts, something shifted. The arrangement we'd made 3 months ago had evolved into something neither of us had planned. Something that felt terrifyingly, impossibly like family. The shift was subtle, but undeniable. After that night in Luca's room, Dante stopped fighting our growing closeness. He stopped making excuses for why I should leave before dinner. Stopped maintaining careful distance during Luca's bedtimes. Stopped pretending this was just an arrangement for his son's benefit. My days developed a new rhythm. Work at the cafe in the mornings, afternoons with Luca, evenings that increasingly included Dante. We'd eat dinner together, the three of us, sometimes with Marco joining to add his particular brand of cheerful meddling. After, while Luca did homework or played, Dante and I would talk. Really talk. About everything and nothing. His childhood in this house. My struggles as the daughter of immigrants. Our dreams, fears. The carefully hidden vulnerabilities we'd learned to protect. It felt like dating, except more intimate. We were building something with Luca at the center, yes, but also something that existed just between us. In the looks that lasted too long. The accidental touches that weren't quite accidental anymore. The awareness that charged the air whenever we were in the same room. Marco watched it all with barely concealed delight. "You know," he said one evening, cornering me in the kitchen while Dante was upstairs tucking Luca in. "I haven't seen my son smile this much since before. Well, since before everything went dark. He's a good man, Marco, a good father. And he's falling in love with you, whether he'll admit it or not." I busied myself loading the dishwasher, not trusting myself to respond, because I was falling too, tumbling headlong into feelings I had no right to have for a man whose world was so different from mine. "Don't look so frightened, Cara," Marco said gently. "Love isn't always a bad thing. It is when it's this complicated. All love is complicated. The question is whether it's worth the complication." He squeezed my shoulder. And from where I stand, watching my grandson finally have the family he deserves. Worth it. Absolutely worth it. 3 weeks later, everything changed again. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Luca and I were in the garden, him showing me the progress of his vegetable seedlings, when my phone rang. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me accept the call. "Is this Esmeralda Ruiz?" A woman's voice, professional but strained. Yes, who is this? I'm calling from St. Catherine's nursing home. It's about your mother. I'm afraid there's been an incident. The world tilted. What kind of incident? Is she okay? She fell. We've called an ambulance, but you should come. The doctor wants to discuss her condition with family. I barely remembered ending the call, barely registered Luca asking what was wrong. I was moving automatically, grabbing my purse, my keys, my hands shaking so badly I dropped them twice. Esmeralda, what happened? I looked down to find Luca at my elbow, his face creased with worry. My mother, the nursing home called. I have to go. I'm sorry, Piccolo. I know I promised to help with your science project, but is she going to be okay? The simple question, the genuine concern from this 6-year-old, broke something open in my chest. I don't know. I hope so. I'll pray for her. And for you. I hugged him quickly, fiercely, then rushed for the door. I made it to my car before the tears started. Made it halfway down the driveway before I had to pull over because I couldn't see through them. My mother and I had a complicated relationship, distant in many ways, strained by her traditional expectations and my choices. But she was still my mother, still the woman who'd raised me alone after my father died, still the only family I had left. A knock on my car window made me jump. I looked up through tears to find Dante standing there in the rain that had started to fall. He must have seen me from the house, must have come after me. I rolled down the window. I'm fine. I just need a minute. You're not fine, and you're not driving like this. He opened the door. Move over. I'm taking you. Dante, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. I'm choosing to. Now move over before we're both soaked. I slid into the passenger seat, too emotionally wrung out to argue. Dante got behind the wheel, adjusting the seat for his longer legs, and pulled back onto the driveway without another word. Luca is with my father. I texted him already. He navigated onto the main road with practiced ease. Where's the nursing home? I gave him the address, my voice hoarse from suppressed tears. He drove in silence for a few minutes, then reached over and took my hand, lacing our fingers together. The simple gesture of comfort undid me. I cried, quiet, messy tears, while Dante drove and held my hand, and didn't try to fix or diminish what I was feeling. At the nursing home, he parked and turned to me. I'm coming in with you. You don't need to do that. Esmeralda. He cupped my face gently, his thumb wiping away tears. You've been alone for too long. Let me be here for you, please. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Inside, a doctor met us with news that was better than I'd feared, but still serious. My mother had fractured her hip in the fall. She'd need surgery, then extensive rehabilitation. At her age, with her existing health conditions, it was risky. Can I see her? They led me to her room where she lay looking small and fragile in the hospital bed. Her eyes found mine, and for the first time in years I saw real fear there. Mija, she whispered. I'm sorry. I know this is expensive. The surgery, the recovery. I know you can't afford. Shh, Mama. Don't worry about that. Just focus on getting better. But the bills will be handled, Dante said quietly from the doorway. Both my mother and I looked at him in surprise. I'd almost forgotten he was there. Good afternoon, Senora Ruiz. I'm Dante Maldivano, a friend of your daughter's. My mother's eyes widened in recognition of the name, but Dante continued smoothly. The hospital bills, the surgery, the rehabilitation, all of it will be covered. You just focus on your recovery. I can't accept. You're not accepting charity, Senora. You're accepting help from someone who cares about your daughter. His hand found my shoulder, warm and solid. someone who wants to ease her burdens any way he can. After they took my mother for tests, Dante and I sat in the waiting room. I stared at the gray linoleum, processing everything. "You didn't have to do that," I said finally. "Offer to pay for everything. I know. I can't pay you back. Not for years. Maybe not ever. I don't want payment." He turned to face me fully. "Esmeralda, these past months with you and Luca, they've given me something I thought I'd lost. Hope. Happiness. A future that looks like more than just survival." He took my hand again. "Let me do this. Not as payment or obligation, but because I want to. Because you matter. To Luca, yes, but also to me. Dante, I know this isn't how we plan things. I know this started as an arrangement for Luca's benefit, but somewhere along the way, it became more. You became more." His dark eyes held mine, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen. "I can't promise I won't mess this up. I probably will. But I'm asking you to give me the chance anyway." "The chance to what?" "To prove I can be more than what I am. To show you that I can open up, let someone in, maybe even love again, if you'll be patient with me." My heart hammered against my ribs. "You're saying—" "I'm saying I'm falling for you, Esmeralda Ruiz. Have been for weeks now, maybe longer. And I'm terrified of it. Terrified of losing you the way I lost her. Terrified that I'll ruin this before it even starts. But I'm more terrified of not trying. I should have been cautious. Should have remembered all the reasons this was complicated. But sitting in that sterile waiting room with my mother's uncertain future looming, and this damaged, careful man offering me his heart, caution felt like cowardice. "I'm falling for you too," I whispered. "And it scares me just as much." His smile was tentative, beautiful, transforming his face into something younger, less burdened. "Then we'll be terrified together." He kissed me there in the hospital waiting room, soft and sweet and full of promise. It tasted like new beginnings and hard-won trust, and the first brave steps toward something real. When we finally pulled apart, I rested my forehead against his. "Luca is going to be insufferable when he finds out. He's been plotting this for months." Dante laughed, the sound genuine and warm. "He gets that from my father. Marco's been scheming since day one. They're going to take full credit. Let them. As long as you're mine, they can claim whatever they want." Mine, the possessive word should have alarmed me. Instead, it felt like safety, like belonging, like home. Later that night, after my mother's successful surgery, after I'd held her hand while she drowsily assured me she'd fight to recover, Dante drove me back to his house instead of my apartment. "Stay tonight," he said when I started to protest. "Luca will want to know you're okay, and—" he hesitated. "I'll sleep better knowing you're close." I stayed, and when Luca saw me, he launched himself into my arms with such force I nearly toppled over. "Esmeralda, you're okay. Nono said your mom got hurt, but she's going to be fine, and that Papa would take care of everything, which I knew he would because he takes care of all of us now. All of us." The casual inclusion made my eyes sting with fresh tears. "See, Piccolo, we're all going to be fine." That night, after Luca was asleep, I found Dante in his study. He looked up from his papers when I entered, his expression softening. "Can't sleep." Too much to process. I moved to the leather sofa near his desk. Today was a lot. Regret it? Not even a little. He rose from his desk and came to sit beside me, close enough that I could feel his warmth. "I need to tell you something. About Luca's mother. About why I'm the way I am." I took his hand, offering silent support. "Her name was Valentina. We married young. Too young, probably. She was beautiful, charming, and completely unprepared for the reality of my world." His voice was flat, carefully controlled. She thought being a Maldivano wife would be glamorous, parties and jewelry and status. She didn't understand the restrictions, the danger, the isolation. What happened? Luca happened. He was unplanned, unexpected. And suddenly she was trapped with a baby and a husband whose business put them both at risk. She started pulling away. Emotionally first, then physically. She'd leave for days, claiming she needed space. I thought. He stopped, his jaw working. I thought she was having an affair. Confronted her about it. Was she? No. She was planning her escape. And when I pushed, she ran. Left a note saying she couldn't do this anymore. Couldn't be a mother. Couldn't be my wife. Couldn't live in constant fear. His hand tightened on mine. She left our 2-year-old son, like he was a burden she was relieved to shed. Oh, Dante. I looked for her. For months. Partly because I wanted answers. Mostly because I thought Luca deserved a mother who'd fight for him, even if she didn't want me. But she'd vanished completely. And eventually, I realized she wasn't coming back. That I'd have to be enough for him. You are enough. More than enough. Luca is lucky to have you. Is he? Because sometimes I wonder if I'm raising him to be like me. Closed off, suspicious, unable to trust. He looked at me, his dark eyes haunted. That's what you're getting, Esmeralda. A damaged man who doesn't know how to love without holding back parts of himself. A father who's terrified every day that he's failing his son. I shifted closer, taking his face in my hands. You're not failing him. Luca is happy, healthy, secure in your love even when you think you're not showing it enough. And you're not as damaged as you believe. You're just careful. And after what you've been through, that's not weakness. It's survival. Is that what you want? A careful man who's always waiting for the other shoe to drop? No. I kissed him softly. I want you. Exactly as you are. Careful and damaged and trying so hard to be better. I want the man who takes photos of his son when he thinks no one's looking. The man who creates treasure hunts and reads bedtime stories and pays for surgeries without being asked. The man who's terrified of loving again, but is brave enough to try anyway. His arms came around me, pulling me close. I don't deserve you. Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway. We stayed like that for a long time, holding each other in the quiet study, letting the truth of what we'd become settle around us. When he finally walked me to the guest room where I'd be sleeping, he paused at the door. Esmeralda, thank you for giving me a second chance at this. At family, at happiness, at hope. Thank you for taking it. He kissed me goodnight, sweet and lingering, a promise of more to come. And as I drifted to sleep in the guest room of his home, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Safe, wanted, home. The next 3 weeks brought a new normal to the Maldivano household. Dante and I navigated our new relationship with careful steps, learning each other outside of the protective buffer of focusing solely on Luca. We had dinner dates after Luca was in bed, taking advantage of Marco's delighted offers to babysit. We stole kisses in hallways, held hands under the dinner table, shared looks across rooms that spoke volumes. Luca noticed, of course. He was too observant not to. Are you and Papa in love now? He asked me one afternoon while we worked on building a fort out of couch cushions. I paused in hanging a blanket. Would that make you happy, Piccolo? See, I've been hoping forever. Well, not forever, but since you started coming around. You make him smile with his whole face now, not just his mouth. The observation was so accurate and so touchingly said that I pulled him into a hug. You're a very smart boy, Luca Maldivano. I know. Papa says I get that from Nono. He pulled back, suddenly serious. Does this mean you're going to stay forever? Be my real family, not just my friend? I'm already your real family whether I stay or not. But staying would be better. It wasn't a question. Yes, I agreed softly. Staying would be better. I started staying more nights, sleeping in the guest room still, but becoming a constant presence. My apartment sat mostly empty, a place I visited only to collect mail and clothes. My mother's recovery progressed well, thanks to the excellent care Dante's money afforded. Everything was falling into place beautifully, terrifyingly perfectly, which should have been my first warning that something would go wrong. The threat came on a Tuesday, 5 weeks after my mother's surgery. I was at the cafe working my morning shift when a man I didn't recognize came in. Expensive suit, cold eyes, carrying himself with the kind of casual violence that made my survival instincts scream. Esmeralda Ruiz? He didn't wait for confirmation. I have a message for you to deliver to Dante Maldivano. My blood ran cold. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't play stupid. Everyone knows you're his woman now, his weakness. He leaned across the counter, close enough that I could smell cigarette smoke and cologne. Tell him the Rossis want to renegotiate territorial agreements. And we're using you as leverage to make sure he's motivated to be reasonable. The Rossis? The rival family Dante had mentioned once, briefly, before changing the subject. We've been watching you. Know your routines. The afternoons at the house, the nights you stay over, the way you walk in the garden with the kid. He smiled, showing too many teeth. Pretty routine you've got. Would be a shame if something disrupted it. He left before I could respond, before I could process the naked threat in his words. I stood there behind the counter, my hands shaking so badly I had to grip the edge to steady myself. They'd been watching me, knew my schedule, knew about Luca. I called Dante immediately. He answered on the first ring. Kara, is everything... Someone from the Rossi family just threatened me, at the cafe. Said to tell you they want to renegotiate territorial agreements, and they're using me as leverage. The silence on the other end was deafening. Then, in a voice so cold it sent chills down my spine. Get to the car. Marco is outside. He'll bring you here. Now. Dante. Now, Esmeralda. Please. I'd never heard that combination before. Command and plea. I grabbed my purse, told my coworker I had an emergency, and rushed outside to find Marco's car already pulling up. The drive to the Maldivano estate was tense and silent. Marco's usual cheerfulness had been replaced by grim focus. When we arrived, Dante was waiting in the foyer, flanked by men I'd seen occasionally at the house but never paid much attention to. Security, bodyguards, the visible reminder of his other life. He pulled me into his arms the moment I was through the door, his embrace almost painful in its intensity. Did he touch you? Hurt you? No, just threatened. Told me about leverage and negotiations and... I know what they want. He pulled back, his hands framing my face. This is my fault. I should have been more careful. Should have anticipated that they'd see you as a weakness. Dante, this is exactly what I was afraid of. His voice cracked slightly. This is why I didn't want to let anyone close, because my world destroys beautiful things. From somewhere behind him, I heard Luca's voice. Papa? What's wrong? Why does Esmeralda look scared? Dante's eyes closed briefly in pain. Luca, go to your room. But now, Figlio. The authority in his voice was absolute, but I heard the desperation underneath. I watched Luca's small face crumple, saw the fear and confusion in his eyes before he turned and ran up the stairs. The sound of his door slamming echoed through the foyer. He's terrified, I said quietly. We need to talk to him. Explain. No. Dante's hands dropped from my face. You need to leave. Both of you. The words hit like a physical blow. What? This is bigger than I thought. The Rossies are making moves, and you're caught in the middle. You and Luca. I won't risk you. So your solution is to send us away? To do exactly what you're afraid of? Exactly what will break Luca's heart. Better a broken heart than a bullet. His voice was harsh, but I saw the agony in his eyes. Esmeralda, you don't understand the world I operate in. The Rossies don't make idle threats. If they say they're using you as leverage, they mean it. And the best way to protect you is to make you invisible again. I don't want to be invisible. What you want doesn't matter when your life is at risk. We stared at each other, both breathing hard, the truth hanging between us. He was doing it again, building walls, pushing away, choosing isolation over risk, repeating the same patterns that had defined his life since Valentina left. So that's it? I asked, my voice breaking. Someone threatens us and you just give up? Prove them right that I'm a weakness you can't afford? I'm protecting you. You're protecting yourself. From having to choose, from having to fight, from having to risk your heart again. I stepped closer, forcing him to meet my eyes. I'm not Valentina, Dante. I'm not going to run at the first sign of danger. But if you push me away now, if you prove that you don't trust our bond enough to fight for it, then you're doing her job for her. You're breaking Luca's heart and proving to him that people always leave. Better I do it than what? Then let him have a family. Let him see his father choose love over fear. Let him learn that sometimes things worth having are worth fighting for. Dante's face was a mask of pain. You don't understand what you're asking. I'm asking you to be brave, to believe that we're stronger together than apart, to trust that I knew what I was getting into when I fell for you. I reached for his hand, gripping it tightly. The Rossies want to use me as leverage? Fine. Use that against them. Show them that threatening me is declaring war on the Maldivano family, that I'm not a weakness, but a line they crossed at their peril. And if something happens to you, if they hurt you to prove a point, then you protect me. The way I know you can. The way you've protected Luca his whole life. The way you'll protect our family. I paused on that word deliberately. Because that's what we are now, Dante. A family. And families don't abandon each other at the first sign of trouble. He stared at me for a long moment, emotions warring across his face. Fear, anger, desperate longing, hope. Then Marco spoke from where he'd been standing quietly by the door. She's right, Figlio. Sending her away makes her a target anywhere else, and confirms the Rossi's belief that you're vulnerable. But bringing her fully under our protection, making it clear she's family, that's a message they'll understand. Dante's eyes never left mine. You're asking me to make you a permanent target, to paint a crosshair on your back. I'm asking you to let me choose my own risks, to trust that I'm strong enough to handle your world. I squeezed his hand. I love you, Dante Maldivano, and I'm not leaving unless you physically throw me out. So you need to decide right now whether you're going to hide behind fear or stand up and fight for what we're building. The silence stretched. Then, slowly, Dante pulled me close and kissed me. Hard, desperate, full of promises and apologies and newfound determination. When he pulled back, his expression had changed. The vulnerable, frightened man was gone. In his place was the mob boss, the protector, the man who'd built an empire through sheer will and strategic brilliance. Marco, call a family meeting. Tonight. Every head of household. His voice was steel. The Rossies want to negotiate. We'll negotiate. But first, we're making something very clear. What's that, boss? Dante's arm tightened around my waist, pulling me against his side in a gesture of unmistakable possession. that Esmeralda Ruiz is under Maldivano protection. Full family status. Anyone who touches her is declaring war on all of us. He looked down at me. If you're going to be part of this family, we do it right. Officially. Permanently. Dante, what are you saying? I'm saying marry me. Not someday. Not when things calm down. Soon. This week if possible. His hand found my face, his thumb tracing my cheekbone with devastating gentleness. I love you, Esmeralda, and I'm done being afraid of that. I'm done letting my past dictate my future. I'm done choosing safety over happiness. That's the fear talking. No. The fear was telling me to push you away. This is courage. This is me choosing to fight for you, for us, for the family we're building. So what do you say? Will you marry me and let me spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of you? I should have thought about it, should have considered all the implications and risks. But looking into his eyes, seeing the certainty and love and determination there, I knew there was only one answer. Yes, I'll marry you. His kiss was claiming, possessive, full of relief and joy. When we finally broke apart, Marco was grinning like he'd won the lottery. About time. I was starting to think I'd have to lock you two in a room together until you figured it out. You practically did, I said, laughing through happy tears. All those convenient emergencies and forgotten appointments. A father does what he must. Marco's expression sobered slightly. But he's right, Esmeralda. Once you're officially family, the rules change. You'll be protected, but also watched. Your freedom will be limited. Are you prepared for that? I looked at Dante, this complicated, damaged, beautiful man who'd let me into his heart despite every fear screaming at him not to. I'm prepared for whatever it takes. Luca's voice came from the stairway. Does this mean Esmeralda is going to be my mama? We all turned to find him sitting halfway up the stairs, his small face hopeful and tentative. He must have been listening the whole time. Dante crossed to the stairs and sat beside his son, pulling him close. Would you like that, Piccolo, for Esmeralda to be part of our family forever? More than anything. Luca's voice was small but fierce. I love her, Papa, and I love you, and I want us to all be together, really together, like real families are. Then that's what we'll be. Dante kissed the top of his son's head. A real family, the kind that stays together no matter what, the kind that fights for each other. Luca launched himself at me, wrapping his arms around my waist. You're going to be my mama. For real. I held him close, this bright, brave little boy who'd chosen me long before his father had. For real, Piccolo. Forever. The family meeting that night was an education in Dante's world. 15 men gathered around a massive table in a room I'd never been allowed in before. The heads of allied families, all sworn to the same codes that govern Dante's life. I sat beside him, his hand clasped with mine on top of the table where everyone could see. A statement. A declaration. He spoke in Italian too rapid for me to follow completely, but I caught the important parts. Esmeralda Ruiz. Maldivano protection. Future wife. Family. When he finished, one of the older men leaned forward. You're sure about this, Dante? Bringing an outsider into the family officially? I'm certain. She's already proven her loyalty, her strength, her commitment to my son. The wedding will happen this week. And afterward, anyone who threatens her answers to all of us. The Rossis won't like it. The Rossis can go to hell. Dante's voice was cold steel. They threatened what's mine. That ends now. We send them a message tomorrow. Clear, unmistakable. If they want a war, we'll give them one. But if they want to negotiate, they do it with respect. The men around the table nodded, accepting his authority. The meeting dissolved into logistics and strategy that I didn't need to understand. This was Dante's world, and he was handling it. Later, after everyone had gone and Luca was finally asleep, Dante and I stood in the garden under the stars. His arms were around me, my back pressed against his chest, both of us processing the enormity of what we'd committed to. "Are you scared?" he asked quietly. "Terrified," I admitted, "but also sure. This is right, Dante. Us. This family we're building. I feel it in my bones. I wish I could promise you safety, a normal life. I don't want normal. I want real. And this, us, it's the realest thing I've ever felt." He turned me in his arms, his expression serious. "I love you, Esmeralda Ruiz. I'll spend every day of our marriage proving it. I love you too, and I'll spend every day reminding you that you're worthy of being loved." We stood there under the stars, holding each other and dreaming of the future. A future that would start in 3 days, with a small, quick wedding at the Maldivano estate. A future that would continue with navigating the complicated waters of his world together. A future that would expand sooner than we knew. Because 2 months later, after we'd married in a ceremony that brought tears to Luca's eyes and made Marco insufferably smug about his matchmaking success, I would take a test that showed 2 pink lines. Twins. We were having twins. When I told Dante, his face cycled through shock, fear, and finally, pure joy. "More family," he whispered, his hand covering my still flat stomach with reverent care. "More love. More reasons to keep fighting, to keep choosing bravery over fear." Luca, when we told him he'd be a big brother to 2 babies, cheered so loudly the whole house could hear. "I'm going to teach them everything. How to build forts and make Nono laugh and how to make Papa smile. This is the best family ever." And standing there in the library where it had all really begun, with Luca dancing around us and Dante's arms solid around me and our twins growing beneath my heart, I had to agree. This wasn't the family I'd planned for. It was complicated, dangerous, built on foundations of trauma and hard-won trust. But it was real. It was ours. And it was absolutely the best family ever. Because sometimes, the best things in life aren't the safe choices. They're the brave ones. The choices that require us to open our hearts despite every fear screaming at us to stay closed. The choices that transform us from people who merely survive into people who truly live. I'd walked into a cafe 3 months ago expecting just another ordinary day. I'd walked out having met a lonely little boy with dark eyes and a smile that could light up the world. I hadn't known that boy would lead me to his father. To a man who'd forgotten how to hope until I reminded him. To a love that was complicated and imperfect, and absolutely worth every risk. Dante Maldivano had claimed my heart without meaning to, and I'd claimed his right back. Intentionally. Fiercely. Forever. In his arms, surrounded by our family, with twins growing beneath my heart, and a future full of possibilities spreading before us, I finally understood what home really meant. Not a place. Not safety or comfort or ease, but belonging. Being chosen and choosing in return. Building something beautiful from broken pieces, and knowing, bone deep, that you'd found the people worth fighting for. Worth risking everything for. Worth loving with your whole heart, consequences be damned. This was our family, our love, our future, and it was everything.